And it got us into the habit of that particular pattern of buying and living. And it was a good step away from suburbia for us.
Well, the good thing about it was that our access road to our driveway was a little longer than our driveway now. It was a little over a half mile. That main access road was gravel.
Right.
And unfortunately for us, we had the biggest snowstorm the first year that we moved out
Right,
there.
that anyone had seen in 50 years.
So we gained experience on gravel road, mud road, which was our driveway.
Right.
Too much snow.
Right.
Too little experience, both in terms of people who could help us and in terms of what do you do when the power goes out and you don't have access to a power line or power source of any kind.
Right.
When you rely on a well for water because there was no pressure tank.
Right. We did fine. I don't ever remember it being a big deal. We just had a real, we can manage this attitude. And we were lucky enough to be in a populated enough area that the power didn't normally stay out for more than a couple of hours.
Well, what I can tell you absolutely is that if a city dweller had moved out onto that property, they would have lasted
15 minutes.
Maybe.
Yeah. Now we did have, that was pre cell phones. There were no cell phones then, so we had a landline at your house, which was fine most of the time. And there was no emphasis on, although you worked in the computer and high-tech industry, we didn't have any computers at home that I remember at all. And then it was like, we were fine. I used to go out with the baby in a backpack and cut firewood. It was just one of those things you did.
So I really, really appreciate their decision at Homesteady to go out and try living off-grid.
I just would have done it a lot different. The first thing I would have done, especially with that many kids, because even if the husband is going to be there, it depends on the father's current engagement with the children. Who handles the kids most of the time? Are you counting on the safe environment of a house where you can lock the doors and windows to keep your kids safe and having everything child-proofed? Because their youngest one is still really little. You sort of sit there and go, okay, take them camping. Get one of the big camping things, like the headquarter tents, where you have multiple compartments. So if you put all the girls in one, put the boys in another one, that sort of stuff, the baby's got to be with mom and dad. If you can't deal with that for a week,
you're not ready.
You're not ready. If your kids can't live without their media,
you're not ready.
You're not ready. If they can't, okay, so you have say you have the really good heavy-duty batteries and stuff, kind of like the one we take to events with us. They would have store-bought ones. We have one that you made for us. We can charge our cell phones, the iPad mini, the iPad Pro.
Basically, all the electronics for Irene's business.
Right. So and the credit card machine, because one of those takes juice. Well, actually, both of them take juice. We could charge those for an entire event that lasts a week, and we won't be in danger at the end of that time frame of being out of juice. We tend to get up when the sun comes up and go to bed when the sun goes down. We have electric lanterns, which are battery powered, not rechargeable, for the evening because it's just safer than dealing with propane. We used to use propane lanterns and stuff like that. They changed the availability of the really good propane lantern, what do they call those things?
Mantles.
Mantles.
Yeah, they used to use what's called a thoriated mantle.
Right.
And there were some issues with that. If you ate one,
they're toxic.
That it had a radioactive element in it, and
Right.
that's what really allows it to put out really bright light.
Right. Well, they made them safe, and now they put out a quarter of the light. And when we changed into our new mantles, because the old ones had died, I mean, we'd had them, and we were very careful, so we never were wasteful with them. All of a sudden, we couldn't get the light that we needed, and you picked up a couple of lanterns just as a sort of a lark on sale down at Harbor Freight, and we went, oh, this is it from now on. Carried the lanterns with us for a couple of years, and finally went, why are we still carrying these? We never use them anymore. I like the fact that if we're using an electric lantern and we were to fall asleep somehow, we don't have to worry about the thing setting the place on fire. The worst thing we could do is run our batteries down, and then we usually have some spare batteries with us. But when I think about the things that we considered to be normal, because we were doing a fair amount of camping, and even before we really started with my business, we used to boondock with an RV.
Yeah, we would go for 3 to 5 to 10 days boondocking in our RV.
Right.
Which boondocking simply means there's no hookups to anything.
Right.
And at the time I was consulting and I needed to be on call for my clients pretty much 24/7.
Right. So we found someplace where we could park that would have good enough connectivity so he could stay in touch if he needed to, but we didn't have hookups and stuff, and we knew how far we could push, and that was out without the new fancy batteries they have now. We knew how long we could stay in that RV. We were super conservative with water use. We knew what our limitations were and what our pain points were. The big thing for people when they move out is the pain point. What's your pain point?
When you move from the city to the suburbs,
Yep.
There's going to be some pain points moving from that environment to the new environment.
Right.
When you move suburbia to rural, I'm not going to say off-grid, but just rural,
Right.
There's another set of
Right. Everything
pain
is
points.
farther away. There probably will not be a local cafe that you could go to. I mean, like if we wanted to go to a Starbucks, there's a Starbucks up in Williams. I don't like Starbucks coffee, so that's not a problem. But there's a Starbucks up in Williams that we could go to.
I don't want to drive 23 miles to go spend $5 for a small cup of coffee. That's just not.
That I don't even like the flavor of.
So, when you move from suburbia, or even let's say a suburbia-style family farm to off-grid,
Right.
there's a whole new set of pain points.
Whole new set of points.
When you have a large home and you have space enough to segregate kids out, if you have kids, when you move off-grid, chances are you're not going to have that much space because most off-grid spaces are smaller.
Yeah, yeah. For this area, we have a very large house because we have a lot of books and other stuff. We didn't want... It is possible to move off-grid. I remember chatting with a friend about this. She was interested in possibly moving off-grid. She was tired of suburban life and all that other kind of stuff. Now, she lives in a really cute neighborhood. I really like the area she lives in. But the area she lives in is also experiencing some upbuilding. So you'll tear down an old house and you build 3 in its place, that sort of thing, because they're large yards. And she didn't enjoy that. So she talked to me about what did I have to think about it. And I'm like, unless you've got a lot of money, you can't do it. First of all, she's pretty independent. She used to actually be a park ranger. And she lived in a bunch of wilderness areas and stuff, so she's capable of the camping and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if she could do electrical and plumbing and all that other kind of stuff, because in general, in your real off-grid areas, getting people to come out and do that kind of thing is really difficult.
Yeah, I've just spent more than a year getting the schematics and the diagnostic manual from our range supplier, so I can go in and fix the problems that are in our range, because it's 15 years old, things wear out, I have a few parts I know I need to replace, now I can do that.
Yeah, but there used to be somebody down in Chino that would come out here. Now you had to wait. You might have to wait 2 or 3 weeks for them to get out, so it's not going to be an instant repair. They would charge you $60 to come out.
That was then.
That was then. This was years ago. They would charge you $60 to come out. That was their travel fee. They would evaluate what was wrong with the piece of equipment. They would go back to their office and order the parts. they would charge you another $60 to come back out and do the repair work. And we were thrilled for that because that's the best you were going to get. One of the reasons people in this area, because I remember talking to one of the neighbors about this, he said that everybody used to get their appliances from Sears.
Sears, right.
Because Sears would just plain send a repair guy out. No travel expenses, no nothing. You bought that, you have the guarantee, you have the warranty. Tell him when he should come out.
That's all over.
And that's, of course, well, Sears is gone. But that was one of the reasons people out here used all the Frigidaire products and Kenmore products and stuff, because Sears sold that stuff and they could get the repair done. And before then, before that was available, you threw it in the back of a pickup truck and hauled it wherever. Well, we've got a 48-inch range. We are not throwing anything in the back of a pickup truck.
And it weighs 660 pounds. And while I could move it in here 15 years ago,
I don't want to move it out.
I don't want to move it out.
It's hard enough to slide out away from the wall to work on. So it's things like that that are a real shock to people. And I mean, we had very little work in terms of the plumbing done on this house by a licensed plumber. We had 2 plumbers that worked for us. The one guy
both were licensed.
Both were licensed. The one guy was moonlighting, and the other guy was charging his full boat. And the guy who charged his full boat screwed up every single thing he did. Yep. Every single thing. We had to redo everything that guy did.
Yeah, well, that happens.
And it's just like, really? I waited all this time, and then you screwed it up. The other guy did a good job. He made one mistake, but that could happen anywhere. But all the other work he's done has held up really well.
Yeah. Following along with Homesteady for years now, there's a few things that really come to mind when it comes to moving from more rural suburbia, because that's not suburbia where they were, to off-grid. One is you need to self-assess your own capabilities.
Well, and they did talk about that. They actually did what they were afraid of, because Henry and I we watched them talk about what they were afraid of. Like, they knew they were going to be pooping in a bucket. Let's be blunt about that. They did not have a septic system. They did not have an outhouse that they thought was going to be functional. So they were going to be using a bucket with sawdust as their bathroom. Not my idea of a good time. Like, one of them was concerned about it, the other one was not concerned about it. We were going through all the things that they were worried about, and I'm like, the only thing that would really worry me in that environment was bears. Yeah. I'm really not a big fan of bears, and they have grizzlies where they are. I mean, we did have a couple of people in Arizona get killed by bears this year, but those are freak events. That doesn't happen very often. But it was hysterical listening to the things that they were freaked out about, and I'm like, okay, you could test these things to see what because sometimes people will say, oh, I don't think I can do this. I've had people tell me I can't use an outhouse. I can use an outhouse. It's not my favorite thing on the planet. My grandparents had an outhouse in the yard. They also had a flush toilet inside. But if you were playing out or working with Grandpa in the shed or something like that, you didn't necessarily run back in.
Yeah. So really, they did talk about things, but the thing that they really missed, and this is something that really everybody ought to take to heart, is do a self-assessment. How are your mechanical skills? Can you replace a bolt in a washing machine? Can you replace a screw in your car? Can you replace a hose in your car?
Can you look at the car and realize that the only thing that's wrong with it is it's missing a bolt?
Yeah. So there's that category of self-assessment. And then there's the question of, are you comfortable doing electrical wiring? Can you do plumbing? How do you solve specific kinds of problems? If you don't have those skills, you really got to think about, are you ready for going off-grid? Because I think at the final analysis, I don't know how this whole story for Homestead is going to end up.
No, we haven't seen that. We've been watching every one they published.
So we haven't watched to see how it finally ends up, but I'm pretty sure that it's going to be okay for them. I will tell you that if most people go from a family farm, let's call it suburbia because it is kind of suburbia.
Well, you can see the next farm over from their farm, just like you can see we can see our neighbors from here. We can only see their top floor. But towards the end of our driveway, we can see their greenhouse and their workshop. You know, I could hear them if they're having a fight over there because it's quiet. You know, I can hear the other neighbor's sheep sometimes. I can hear the other neighbor's donkey sometimes because it's quiet. And while I commend the fact that they did actively think about, you know, what bothers you the most? Oh, having to do this, having to do that, you know, how are you going to cook? How are you going to keep your food? How are you going to, I mean, all the basics, you know. What are you going to do with children who are used to being stuck in front of a TV? Or who are going to, like, if you're used to being able to hand them a tablet and say, just play with that for 15 minutes while I get this done. They don't have any internet connectivity there. That's a big deal. I mean, there's a bunch of people who are homesteaders of various denominations, I guess you call it, who, until recently when they were able to get Starlink, had to go somewhere, they had to drive a half an hour into town to go upload a video.
Right.
This is a big deal. I mean, you have to figure that into your schedule. The gasoline, is the weather good enough? Is the place going to be open? Oh, what if you get into town and the internet's down? You know what I mean? This is a pain in the patootie, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a big deal, and they really missed. To me, they looked at the two of them and tried to do an honest assessment of what they figured would bother them. This is a brief stay. This is only a couple of months. This is not 6 months or a year or the rest of your life. I'm comfortable if my bed is comfortable. That's what I worry about. Is my bed comfortable? I'm too old to be sleeping on something that won't be. I need a relatively comfortable bed. Is my water clean and sanitary? Is my food clean and sanitary? Can I have enough clean water to wash in a bucket? Yes, a hot bath is a lovely thing, but I can wash in a bucket really well. And I have done it many, many, many times when we camped. Either because the showers were down where we were staying or some other foolishness, or it was late and I didn't feel like walking a mile to go to the shower or something like that. They didn't look at a lot of that practical stuff.
Yeah, one of the things that you need to look at if you have other family members is you need to look at objectively how do they function. There is one child in the Homesteady family who is highly, highly goal-oriented. Mm-hmm. She's
one of the younger ones, too. She's not the oldest.
She wants to be able to have a campfire outside.
Right.